The Witches, the Book, and the Emotional Support Demon. Fanfic for Dragon Age Inquisition, Hocus Pocus. Had Dorian, Josephine, or any other soul, for that matter, known what was hidden in the new book shipment from the winter, they'd never have been happy to see it in the first place. If anything, even Pavus, with all his criticism, would have found it appropriate to invoke the old chantry practice of burning books. But "if" is a very strong word, so that lovely sunny noon, maker forsaken freezing too early for thinking if you ask Dorian, Elisma walked into the main library with a crate of new books, and the resident researcher dug into it with delight. He even bothered to thank the Tranquil for making his day better. I promised that if I... Oh, here it is. You may take this one. Animalum Ingenialis. I remember you asking about it. Elisma remembered loving animals before becoming Tranquil, and almost felt pleased at the attention. But before she could express it, Dorian already forgot about her and dug deeper into the crate, humming with delight. In the pile of books, something truly dark reacted to his singing and stirred. The next day, the Inquisitor was away for something diplomatic, which means he took Varric to talk to people, Ian to snub people, and Bull to make sure no one punched the living daylight out of the first two, which greatly reduced the amount of decent people to talk to, as far as Dorian was considered. Therefore, he stayed in the library even later than usual, and hummed just to hear his own voice. And since this time there were less people in the library, nothing disturbed the sound of a song praising the fine art of mortalitasi. Unnoticed by him, the pile of books waiting for their turn started shaking, and from it rose a strange book with an eye on a cover. The sound of books shifting made Dorian stop singing and look around him, but he didn't see anyone who could have triggered the sound until he noticed the strange artifact. What in the name? The mage grabbed his staff, already pondering how to use fire with the least possible damage to the library. The book remained floating, then opened, and its page started turning. Finally, it reached a certain point and released a cloud of smoke, which formed into 3 women. The newcomers first sneered at the sight of Dorian, but then smirked in delight. "Oh, look, sisters!" One of them, a skinny blonde, screeched. "A fine male mage! Are you here to assist us?" "I don't believe we were introduced. May I inquire about your names?" Good manners were excellent for drawing time and planning. "I'm Sarah Sanderson. Those are my sisters, Mary and Winifred." Dorian of House Pavus, most recently of Skyhold. The mage bowed politely, keeping his eyes on the witches. "So charming," Winifred smirked. "So tell me, where can a lady get some refreshments around here?" She assumed that if a mage sits around dressed in jewelry, completely unconcerned, that this place might be a safe haven for magic users. "I wish I had something better to offer, but the tavern... However, I'm certain we can work something out." "I meant more than mere mortal drink." Winifred allowed her eyes to wander until she spotted a young runner heading to Josephine's office. "How about this one?" "I'm afraid you'll have to be more specific." Dorian concentrated. Above him, a scroll started smoking, attracting Liliana's attention. On it, tiny flames drew the word enemies. "You mean you don't use the locals to add to your power?" Sarah was the least cautious of the 3, so she spelled it out. "Oh dear, I'm afraid that practice is quite unfashionable. In fact, guards!" Dorian mentally cursed himself for not calling for help sooner. "You really should have known better than to oppose the Sanderson sisters." Mary raised her voice threateningly. A whistle of arrow was all the warning they got, because Liliana took notice of the scene and fired a warning shot. "A servant of the church!" the middle hag sneered. "This is your choice of allies, mage?" She moved forward threateningly, only to run into a barrier. "If you're not with us, you're against us," they started singing, voice carrying strong through high arches of the throne room. The spell felt cold, petrifying, and Dorian raised his own voice in return, a desperate improvisation trying to add fire to it. A bright flare later, the witches were gone, vanishing in a cloud of colorful smoke. Liliana rushed to the library and saw the mage gripping his throat, gasping for help. "Somebody get the healer," she called. The moment after every battle belonged to the wounded, and then she'll find exactly what happened and who was about to pay for it. 2 hours later, Dorian sat in Josephine's office, perfectly miserable, nursing a cup of lukewarm tea and cuddling Cole for emotional support. The ambassador was busy briefing the chargers. After all, with one inner circle mage away, the other an asshole with a tendency to spend days in the Fade, not that Josephine allowed herself to say that out loud, and the third temporarily mute. The fortress needed enhanced security for a while. With Bull busy, the organization fell onto his second-in-command, and that second-in-command saw no reason to deny himself a rare pleasure. "Oh, you're so perfect now, so quiet," Graham addressed Dorian's plight. Dorian replied with a raised pinky, a very Tevinter-specific and self-implied. "And not even allowed to draw your sorrow in wine." Classy couldn't help himself. "Now who's going to drink the good stuff with the chief?" A miserable hiss. Cole also raised a pinky. "That's enough," Josephine interrupted. "Are you going to act professional, or do I need to talk to the Iron Bull about changes to your contract?" "Sorry, ma'am. We're used to teasing each other, and it's so strange to have it one-sided." Cole spoke out Dorian's mind. Josephine actually blushed on what the Altos creatively wished upon the Separatus. Antivan or not, some of the most exotic practices apparently slipped past her. "Get out, all of you!" "Come on, let's head to the tavern. If Cabot has honey, I can fix something for your throat." Graham dragged Dorian and his emotional support assassin out. Only then, Josephine was able to burst out laughing. Liliana just had to hear about the whole exchange. The above-mentioned spymaster was no longer on her floor. She headed to the tavern to consult the only useful mage available. On her way, she passed Solus, and couldn't deny herself a snicker, as she saw that someone, who was never an agreeable girl, took his trance as a chance to draw him hair, ugly spirals, mustache, probably used Dorian as a model, and a smile from one ear to another. The work was done using Vivian's waterproof coal stick. All in all, justice served for not being there when she and Paus defended the library. Liliana reached Harold's Rest just in time to hear Delish shriek, "Sanderson sisters! Dir Tarama, Shamlan!" Care to elaborate? Cole's voice again, probably voicing Dorian's question. She took a seat and heard a real horror story unfold. Witches, worse than blood mages, draining the very soul from children. A desperate alliance with a nearby circle, getting Templar involved, burning them to ash. And a sentient grimoire never recovered. "Didn't you mention a flying book?" Graham asked Dorian and got a nod in reply. "Why did you risk contact with the Templar?" the spymaster asked Dalish. "They are practically immortal. We killed them several times, but each time they recovered. I was a kid, so I don't remember much." Dorian banged his head against the table. "It's alright. This time, everyone saw you fight the immortal shit, so nobody blames you." Graham offered support and got a raised pinky in response. "How do they attack?" "We need to protect the children until the Inquisitor returns." "They fly on broomsticks, just like in those Shemlan stories," Delish recalled, "and lots of their magic is voice-based. My mama told me they almost stole me because I wouldn't stay home and was lured by their song." Liliana looked at the window. considered possible attack directions.
Kids, lower library, now!
Dorian rasped and started coughing. If there was anything Haven told the Inquisition, is to evacuate almost efficiently. In less than an hour, all the children were in the lower library. Dorian managed to wordlessly conjure some wisps to keep them amused. Sarah and Blackwall dragged in Solace. The archers smirked and gave the kids more makeup to decorate the sleeping elf, then headed back out to help Cullen and the soldiers. The few available Templars stood as a final line of defense, ready to smite and silence. Delish organized the mages in groups according to skills. Members of the staff rushed in and locked the doors, then did a quick head count. All the kids are accounted for, Liliana took a breath, and all available members of the inner circle are at combat positions. Chargers too. All of them? Josephine suddenly gasped. How old are Sarah and Cole? Andraste, help us. The ex-bard grabbed her bow and rushed out, just in time to see Sarah by the door, a bit messed up, but it was hard to say whether it was due to fighting or her usual looks. Those peace hags tried to do freaky things to me with their singing, she reported. Well, it didn't work, so they turned on Creepy and chased him into the tavern. The winds followed them in. I was just about to look for a shooting point. Get to the point and stay there. Shoot anything that's female and sings. Gotcha! Then Liliana ran to the battlements to get into the tavern through the back door. Apparently, she was just in time for the main show.
And now you're mine.
Winifred's voice carried strong and steady, full of magical power. The three sisters pushed hard, and if they couldn't get a child, they'll just have to try and drain an adult. The demon boy looked tasty, pale and fragile, and the necromancer obviously bit more than he could chew and was rendered useless. Then again, men. In taberna, quando sumus, non curamus, quidsi humus. Cran didn't really have the time to think. Instead, he did what every proper charger should, sang the first rowdy song that came to his mind, loud enough to be heard over the battle. Rocky had a thing with explosives, often becoming too immersed to pay attention, and the chief often got lost in the river mindset. Graham got used to screaming tavern songs until they heard him and got back to reality. You there? Sarah hissed. Primo pruno mata vini. Cole had the wrong pitch, voice lower and less feminine than the spell required, but he had Dorian's magic intent and the old body's magic capacity to support him, so at least now Graham wasn't singing alone. Ex hac bibut libertini. You, of all beings, should be on our side. Mary also broke formation, angry at the non-demon. Winifred had more life experience than both men combined, and the winds were still outnumbered, but she needed her sisters for the mind control to be strong enough. And those two, the androgyne and the traitor mage, did put up a good fight. Territorial bastards. It's not like things would go amiss if they just let them take a kid or two. You're still outnumbered, Sarah gloated. That's when a third voice joined the fray. Quater pro andraste cunctis. A sweet accented female voice. People often forgot that Liliana used to be a bard and fought alongside the hero of Ferelden. It often was their last mistake. Also, Maker bless Devran and his endless list of drinking songs from across Thedas. Now it was 3 against 3. And unlike the invading witches, all 3 members of the Inquisition were used to carrying a tune, even fighting. Liliana was the first one to draw a dagger from a sheath on her belt and take a step forward. Cole followed suit. Soon enough, they had the hags hog-tied and gagged, using pink items that Cole helpfully fetched from the Iron Bull's room. Dorian and Creme absolutely didn't blush. "Now what?" Liliana asked. "We wait until sunrise. According to Dalish, sunlight should be damaging to them," Creme replied.
"Book, fire,"
Dorian added hoarsely.
"Shush,"
both the bard and the mercenary said simultaneously before following his advice. Needless to say that by the time the Inquisitor returned, the witches were history. Liliana was named a honorary charger and had to rely on her bard past once again to stay somewhat upright with all the drinking. Dorian found himself sitting at the same table and cuddling his emotional support Cole again. Apparently, it was good for one's mental health.